Today I have an industry giant here with me, Kevin Artl. Kevin is the president and CEO of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Illinois, also known as ACEC. He represents and advocates for over 200 engineering firms that represent over 11,000 employees. Prior to his current role at ACEC Illinois, Kevin served as Chief Operating Officer of Illinois Tollway, where he helped manage and execute the Tollway's $14 billion Move Illinois Capital Program. As the Tollway COO, Kevin coordinated with industry leaders on tollway policy and capital plans, emerging technologies, and best business practices. Kevin also served in senior roles for over 15 years in both the United States Senate and the Illinois General Assembly. Prior to his work in government, Kevin served as Director of Government Affairs for Amtrak. Welcome to the show, Kevin. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks for having me here. It's awesome.
Thank you for being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself. For the listeners that don't know much about you, give me a few things about you, where you grew up, schools you went to, and most importantly, what you like to do for fun.
Okay. I grew up in Downers Grove, Illinois, southwest suburbs. Went to Downers Grove South High School, ended up at Loyola University in Chicago, and graduated there and started in politics and worked my way up to working at the Illinois Tollway and then ultimately ACEC. So
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, with that, what do you like to do for fun?
I coach basketball and baseball with my sons right now, and then in the summer we'll end up doing a couple triathlons and some long bike rides. So that's been a fun thing to do.
Nice. Did you used to play?
Yeah,
You look like you used to lace them up.
I tried.
All
I
right.
still tried. It's not very effective. But,
What position?
two guard.
Two
So
guard. Okay, you're a shooter.
yes.
All right, I'm about to get Kevin on that court, y'all. All right. So, I would say, what was the defining moment that you knew you wanted to go into leadership and advocacy for an organization as big as ACEC?
Well, I think, I've been in politics a long time, working for the Illinois General Assembly and then U.S. Senate. And through the course of those activities, you have opportunities to go over and pursue lobbying opportunities. But I always felt like for me, it was something like I wanted to, if I was going to go that route and go into advocacy, I wanted to do it for something that I could feel passionate about. And working at the Tollway was a great introduction to this industry and profession. And I learned a ton there. I had some really great mentors in that space who helped me learn the business and understand the impact it has. So when the opportunity then came up to move over to ACC, it was I thought it was a perfect fit. It was something that I could really bring some passion and energy to. So
That's amazing. So, what was your degree in college in?
English and communication. So the perfect precursor to leading an engineering group. So
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. And that's great because engineering, what I like to talk about and what I talk about in my book, is so broad, right? It's an opportunity where folks that have, they may be artsy, people have different interests and backgrounds. I think there's a place within civil engineering because of the broadness of the actual career and the industry that we're in. So no, that's amazing. As far as moving into these leadership roles, I would say name a few things that you had to sacrifice and give up, personally in order to pursue these leadership roles.
Oh, I think it's an immense amount of work, especially moving up in the political scene, like, in working in the General Assembly or the U.S. Senate. Those days and schedules do not gel well with a personal schedule. So, we're in session, and those session days could end at 3:00 or they could go till midnight. So I think, it's one of those things. I think, and I think it applies to every profession starting out. If you're willing to put in the work, people will recognize it and you can advance. So
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. Well, you were one of the first leaders within our industry to endorse this phenomenal bestseller, How to Become a Civil Engineer, Bridging the Gap. What message in this book, or just message around this initiative, resonated with you for you to endorse?
well, I think as a starting point, as we look at, how do we address the workforce challenges in this industry, the book titled Bridging a Gap fills a gap, right? I mean,
Yep.
we don't, the thing about engineers to an extent is we don't tell the story, and I think you tell the story of how you went down this route, what paths you took, and some really usable advice for people looking to do that, so for me it was easy, right? Like, and we need 100 more books like this and 100 more in 100 different mediums to talk to students about choosing this path. um I will say this, my 12-year-old daughter read the book and she was a little
Yeah.
concerned that she might not have that much fun in college after reading your book, but I
Harsh
think
truths.
but I think it was a readable book for kids, for certainly middle schoolers and definitely high schoolers to chart a course and see if this is something they want to do. So,
Yeah. Did anything in the book surprise you and or challenge your perspective on things?
I think it was fun. It was an interesting read to, we always look at the after product, right? Like, you went
Mhm.
to school, you became an engineer, and then this is what you worked on. So I think to have you chart that course, through college and how you got into the marketplace was interesting. And it's harder than people think, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I compared a little bit to other professions, right? And you've got TV series on medical profession or others. And I think, the engineering profession, maybe isn't as sexy as some of those,
Right.
but the stories are there. And I think, it's important for people like you to tell them. So,
Yeah. All right. Now we're going into our rapid fire question round. So just some quick questions. Tea or coffee?
coffee,
Bears or Packers?
Bears,
You better say that. White Sox or Cubs?
Cubs all the way.
Wow. I'm a South Sider, White Sox. All right. So
And I'm not a Chicago fan. I'm a Cubs fan.
you're a
So
Cub fan. All right. So what's one thing about the engineering industry that most people get wrong?
I think people look at it and they look at like roads and bridges and other things, and they don't understand that everything in life comes from engineering. Everything that they do in a normal day, from the
Yeah.
moment you wake up and turn on, the faucet to turning on the lights. I mean, all of that is the result of an engineer.
Yes.
So, I mean, the daily component is fascinating and amazing. So,
Mhm. Okay. Wonderful. If you could change one policy tomorrow to help the profession, what would it be?
um, well, if we could expedite land acquisition, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But that's probably not going to happen with a magic wand. I think we need to really consider, we've talked about workforce issues. What do we do to make an intentional effort to get more kids into engineering? And if
Yeah.
that's greater student aid or, a greater focus from our universities to prioritize engineering. But I think, as we look at other nations, China's an example, they put such a priority on engineering. We should be doing the same. The simple fact is the more engineers we have, the stronger country we're going to be. So,
Yeah, I agree. Engineering is the way of the future. All right. What does leadership mean to you today compared to 10 years ago?
well, I'd say when I worked in the Senate, I worked for Mark Kirk, and he stressed the ODA loop, which is observe, orient, decide, act. And it was developed by the U.S. Air Force. And I think probably 10 or 15 years ago, as I looked at my leadership styles, probably more of a decide, act. And, you know, as you go through these stages in leadership positions and stuff, uh, and working with people, like Senator Kirk and others, I added in the observe and oriented. So like observing the situation, analyzing the data, deciding you need to make a decision, and then acting on it. So definitely more listening, more understanding before just deciding and acting.
Yeah. Do you see that happening currently? Are you seeing a different type of leadership emerge?
Oh, I think so. Well, I guess like personally, yeah. I mean, I definitely am more cognizant and intentional. And certainly, I value viewpoints that are not just my own. I think that's like the evolution of a great leader, right? Is like when you're willing to embrace ideas that may contradict your own,
Yeah.
and but I also think it too in the agencies. I think we work with some incredibly open-minded, innovative agencies like IDOT, Tollway, CTA, Metra, Pace, our counties that are, that's like to me, that's the strength of ACC is that they meet with us, and we can share innovative ideas and some of them get applied, some don't. But and it's not just a one-way street because they share with us what's important to them that we need to impart then to the consulting industry. So um I feel like that collaboration and dialogue is what makes the industry in Illinois stronger, and it certainly brings great value to ACC members.
If you can give one piece of advice on leadership, skills, and styles, what would that be?
Slow down, like listen and slow down, and then communicate. I think there is such in this space of I've been in meetings where people are texting things right away after we just talked about it. And I just think like let's all just slow down. Let's make sure that our first thought is the right thought. Take in some differing opinions and then make a decision. And I'm not saying we need to slow the decision making process, but taking a little time to think it through
Yeah.
and bounce it off a few other people, I think will ultimately lead to better decisions. So
Okay. We talk a lot about inspiring the next generation, um, but enrollment is still lagging in civil engineering. What do you think we're lacking as an industry? What can we do better as an industry to boost our enrollment in civil engineering?
well, I think I would start with it's a really competitive marketplace. And and I think the skills that civil engineers receive are pretty aggressively recruited by other entities outside of civil engineering, right?
Yeah.
I mean, proven problem solvers, project managers, Google, Meta, all the AI companies,
I've been on.
and they are all pursuing civil engineers. So I think that's, you know, it, in a competitive marketplace, that's a challenge. And I think the other thing too is, it goes a lot back to funding.
Mm.
When people see the infrastructure work being done around them, they're more inclined to look at that and pursue that as an option. In Illinois for 20 years, we didn't have much of a capital program, so there was nothing to see, nothing really to catch on and look or even visit.
Yeah.
So I am hopeful that with Rebuild Illinois and IIJA funding and the immense amount of really cool infrastructure work going on in Illinois that helps spark an increase in that.
Yeah, and that was really why I wrote the book. We have to be visible and show a lot of our youth that this is a possibility. Growing up, I didn't know what civil engineer is, and civil engineering is. I did not, and even when I go and ask adults and I ask, students at schools, first question I may ask, how many of you all know what civil engineering is? And you should see, the response I get. Maybe one or two people out of that entire room understands what we do in this industry. So it's very important to get out there early and really try to at least provide that exposure that young people need in order to choose this as a potential career path.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there's middle schoolers now, and this isn't a comment on how long projects take, but
Yeah.
an eighth grader could read your book today and graduate and end up working on 290 or something at O'Hare. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is just starting that initial engineering phase. So
Yeah. So the engineering industry is facing a real workforce shortage right now. Um, from your perspective, what's driving that?
well, I mean, there's a couple components. We talked about it initially, right? It's a competitive marketplace for engineers.
Mm.
Before, if you got a civil engineering degree, you went and you worked in a civil infrastructure space. Now those are being recruited by, the larger tech firms. But then there's just some things that are, it is what it is. Like
Mm.
a college enrollment is declining. that's true. That's a fact. Also, I think in the past there's been a large supplement of international students who obtain H-1B visas. Right now, I think based on the most recent data, we had 37,000 international students who graduated with engineering degrees, but only 3,700 H-1Bs granted. So that's 34,000 that we're educating in the United States that we're saying you can't stay here to work. And then with late enrollment declines and stuff, we're graduating 140,000 engineering students annually, but we're we're retiring 180,000. So that's, so those are all the challenges we're facing. I think when we looked at this and you and I have had these conversations, there's the short game and the long game, right? The short game in this space is how can we allow for more international students who we educate in the US to stay here.
Yeah.
And then the long game is what you're doing. You're writing the book, you've got the foundation, you're talking to students. We're doing explore engineering to get engineers in classrooms, is that starting at the middle school and getting more kids engaged.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And, you spoke about a few different things. You talked about the educational piece, getting the folks early. We talked about maybe compensation, being competitive in our market, with other tech companies that seem like they have a limited amount of money to recruit. And then culturally, right? There's a lot of different things. And when I look at the industry, and, we talked about this previously, it seems like licensing has been the number one driver of some of the shortage, because you really can't work in the industry without licenses, right? And then you have foreign students coming to America, and it's hard for them to obtain licensing because, of course, the education may be a little different, but also some of it may be language barriers, so on and so forth. Do you think that we may be too restrictive on licensing, especially in certain roles such as, and being an inspector, or let's take, for instance, maybe resident engineering? Do you think there's some ways that, we can start to bring in students directly from high school and maybe skip some of the I would say the college level schooling and just training that's needed for some of these positions? Like, is that a remedy that we can look at? Is that something that you've heard?
Well, I think definitely on the technician side, right? I mean, this is an area where and a lot of it goes back to funding. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, our agencies used to have pretty robust partnerships with community colleges to develop a pathway for students who don't want to go to a 4-year path but still want to get a great career. But again, Illinois for 20 years really didn't have much investment in infrastructure. So
Yeah.
IDOT wasn't hiring. There wasn't a need for them to create a pipeline, and now we have to ramp that up. So I definitely think, one thing ACEC's workforce team is looking at is how can we create partnerships with community colleges to develop a curriculum and work with IDOT for placement in that space and create that pipeline of workers. And I think in that space too, maybe as they go through that process, they determine, hey, I didn't really want to go to a 4-year college, but now I do. And are my credits then transferable to pursue that engineering degree? So
Hmm. Okay. Well, ACEC supported House Bill 2801, right, which creates a centralized STEM clearinghouse through the Illinois State Board of Education. That's a lot. Now, in plain English, what does this bill actually do? And for the parents and students, why should they pay attention to this?
yeah, I think it's two things. One, it's good for groups like ACEC and others. So as we get information on STEM opportunities for scholarships or opportunities, internships, there's a place to send them. Like
Yeah.
I do think, like, so to answer your short question, it creates a central clearinghouse for everything STEM related, scholarships, internships, any opportunities in that space. People now can just go to the State Board of Education, go to their website and see what's available. And I think, this from this industry, everyone's trying to do something, but we're all, no, I'm not going to say siloed, but there's not a central spot. So I think this is
Yeah.
a really helpful item here for parents and students as a resource to find opportunities.
Yeah. So policy is great, right? And but a lot of times we see policy fail in the area of execution. Are you hearing things, or does this bill draw out a solid game plan and allow maybe the state to build a platform that firms and organizations like mine, Pinpoint Scholars Foundation, can go register, and for parents to go register? And how soon would that be up
Yeah,
and running?
I know they're working on implementation now, and
Yeah.
I think it's a good first step. I mean, but I
Yeah.
think like there's through this process on workforce, this too. We have to be incrementalists.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, we started ACEC sponsored legislation in the state budget to provide student loan assistance for engineering grads who go to work for IDOT. So that's step one. Now building that pipeline. How do we get more students engaged in civil engineering? This is the clearinghouse bill.
Yeah.
And we're going to be looking at some new options next year. So it's an iterative process, but I think the key thing here is keep making progress and getting all the partners involved, yourself, all the other companies that are doing something in this space to coordinate and promote it. So
Okay. Sounds good. So there's been a lot of discussion and controversy around the new DBE ruling. What's your take on it? How do you think it's affecting engineering firms in Illinois?
we've been tracking this issue for a while, right? And the trend lines here have kind of been leading up to this point.
Yeah.
Obviously, what happened with the USDOT interim final rule memo was surprising in terms of timing, but not really surprising in terms of policy. So, it started with the Harvard case, and then, it went through the SB 8A case, and then ultimately the pending case, the MAMCO versus USDOT. Yeah, I mean, it's a disruptor, but it's been a year of disruptions.
Yeah.
We've had tariffs, we've had funding freezes. The DB rule is one more disruption that our industry is working through. And I think, at least in the space of Illinois, doing pretty successfully. I think, um, you know, at the judicial level, now at the administrative level, there are probably going to be some changes to the DB program as we know it that
Mm.
are going to be long lasting. But I think IDOT and all the UCP partners are doing a tremendous job in navigating these, moving through recertification, a new recertification process, but also again, like kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit and looking towards what's the next program that could be done here.
Yeah.
And we've had ACC has had great coordination with IDOT, CTA, and lawmakers at the governor's office, the Senate president's office, Senator Villavom, and looking at what would a small business program look like and how would that be implemented. So I think that is something on the horizon here in Illinois.
Yeah. So some say the DB program is reverse discrimination. Some say it may hinder and or kind of handicap firms from growing and finding their full potential. But also some say, like myself, that it actually provide access and opportunities, into the industry. But I am aware, and I do see some of the failures of the program. How do you personally feel about the DBE program?
Look, I think it's got great success stories. Like any program, there's always challenges and things you want to fine tune, things you want to fix. But I think it's clearly helped a lot of firms in Illinois create themselves and grow. And I know that our partners, IDA, Tollway, our public-private partners, really value the diversity of firms that they get in teaming selections. And so I think we'll see what comes in the next step. But I think In Illinois specifically, there's been such great collaboration and teamwork on the engineering side. I don't see that ending, whether, regardless of what comes out on the DB rule. I think, the clients want good, diverse teams. I think our profession values teaming
Yeah.
and the expertise that small and mid-sized firms bring to jobs. So, what's mandated and required by law, we'll see. But I
Yeah.
think the practice and the institutional knowledge will stay in that space
Okay. So you're personally in support of it.
of DB program.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been in sports. We've great members of ACEC, and
Yeah. That's good. I appreciate that. I appreciate, you all constant support and push. My personal view is I appreciate the program because without it, um, what reason would firms have to really talk to me? At the end of the day, if it's not broke, then don't fix it. Firms that's been in the industry for 100 years, 50 years doing business with the state and other government agencies, at the end of the day, you're gonna naturally gonna do business with who you're comfortable with, who you have previous experience with. Even if you look at a lot of the scoring criteria on how the selections are made, a lot of it, a big percentage, is based on past experience. So this really allow new firms and younger firms to come in and get that experience. Now, whether they reshape it and say, hey, uh, it's a small business program now and welcome everyone into the fold to come in and get a little bit of experience. I definitely think something is needed to get over that hump, that initial barrier to entry, which is that experience piece doing work directly with an agency. So what's your thoughts on that?
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think, when I was at the tollway, we started, we had the mentor protege program going, and I could see the benefits of that. We
Oh
ended
yeah.
up doing the reverse mentor protege at the tollway. I've had plenty of conversations with IDOT on, the importance of mentor protege and then whatever the next iteration comes up. So I think, I think there's strong support for those efforts continuing and, in providing that guidance and support, whether it's through direct technical assistance or mentor protege programs.
Yeah.
So
But thank you for being in support of that. I think the tollway is the one agency, right? There's other agencies that they have different programs, but they really get it. They really understand that just a DB program by itself may not be enough, right? Because there's a lot of things and areas that small firms have to get experience in just to become competitive. And, I know they did the last quarterly event, they did something with some newer firms, capability statements, building websites. It's pretty cool to see them really try to build small companies into a position to compete. So the P4G, I think, is a great program because it allows you to be partnered and paired with the mentor. You can go in there, get the experience. A lot of this work isn't, it's not rocket science. You just have to be familiar with processes and processes. Tollway UZ Builder or Trimble now versus what IDOT would use CMMS systems. That's pretty much all it is. A lot of the firms, you have licenses, but when it comes to building a business, you have to know how to hire. You have to know how to manage that back office. Have to manage, the ebbs and flow of the funding. And once you get all of that, then that's when you can really become competitive. So I really appreciate these programs and appreciate any efforts that, you put forward to just help continue to build up small firms.
no, 100%. And I think all of our public sector clients are focused on that. I mean, they understand the importance and role.
Yeah. So then one of my last questions, because right now we're seeing the DB, that program is under attack, and there'll be plenty other programs that are under attack. As far as DEI initiative and just the whole theme of diversity, right? Having people from different walks of life a part of what we're building, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's programs. What's your take on diversity as a whole?
Well, I can't, I think, from speaking from experience in Illinois, I don't think our firms need laws or administrative orders or edicts to know what they want to do and who they want to work with. So I think again, my experience at the tollway coming up and then through ACEC is that the teams that are successful generally are diverse. Diverse in practices, diverse, in makeup, and those things, when you have winning teams, you tend to keep that practice in place. So
Yeah.
I think there'll be disruptive efforts at the federal level, and there'll be we'll have to go through some things, and it will be some odd times over the course of the years. All is the DB issue kind of settles in. We still got a federal court case that has to be solved. There could be legislative action and transportation reauthorization. The IFR memo guidance is changing, every month. But at the end of the day, I think, our clients are seeking diverse teams. Our primes continue to want to build diverse teams, and that's what's most important. So.
Okay. So why is an organization like ACEC important?
Well, I think for us, for members, it's a choice, right? Do you want to be at the table? Do you want to be at the table with clients as policy decisions are being made? Do you want to be in a meeting with policymakers in the legislature to tell your story and let them understand how certain actions can impact it either positively or negatively? So we offer that, right? And we are at the front lines of advocacy, both at the agency level, at the administrative level, and then at the legislative level. And we're making success. We've had a great year so far. I mean, a couple things we wanted to get done this year is we wanted to advance lump sum contracting at IDOT. So we got one of those out as a pilot project. We talked to IDOT about adjusting the daily vehicle rate, and they agreed to do that. So that's it hadn't been changed since 2014. So that's a significant increase for firms. And, even simple things like looking at contract language. We worked with Cook County to update some of their language there on indemnification. So
Okay.
not sexy stuff, but it makes a difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I live by the saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So it's definitely important to be a part of organizations that's going to fight for just opportunities and fight for the ability to understand your perspective and where you're coming from. Everyone has a different perspective. So you have to be in those rooms where policy is being made and created. Um, with us, being in a day and age and a time right now where infrastructure funding is being withheld and delayed due to political back and forth, how can an organization like ACEC respond to these challenges for agencies that, they're seeing funding being withheld on the federal level? Like, how do you all advocate and get things moving, keep things rolling without a massive shutdown?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not new, right? We've dealt with these challenges both at the state and federal level. For a couple of years, there were concerns about whether we would get the CPI increase on the motor fuel tax, and we fought for that and made sure that came through. There have been challenges on the transfer over of the sales tax for the motor fuel, so we've fought to make sure that gets through. So like these are not new issues. Certainly at the federal level, the red line extension funding is, the fact that they would freeze that based on initially, I think, DBE concerns and now on crime concerns. Ultimately, I think the CTA has been spot on in how they're approaching it. And, they're not ignoring the request, but they're answering it. And, in some of these concerns that, it's not a federal versus state issue. Like the issues raised over crime on mass transit are shared concerns by everybody, not RD or Fed for state. They were addressed in the transit bill. And I think, that information getting back to the US DOT should help answer some of their questions and ultimately, see a path to getting the funds moving again. So.
Yes, the Red Line Extension is a really big project in a predominantly African American community. There are and or were DB goals. Not sure where they are with that currently. But I think the biggest thing that people from the community want to see is local participation. So from what I'm seeing, there's not much local participation there. What's your take on that, right? Should it, should this thing be less of a DBE requirement type goal and maybe we can pivot to local participation, or what do you think some of the remedies CTA can implement to help?
Well, I'm not entirely familiar with that. I mean, I know with the tollway, especially on the contracting side, they have local participation incentives to get workers from certain zip codes into those projects. I thought that's a pretty innovative way
Mhm.
to approaching it. I mean, it all depends on the labor force at that point and what exists. You know, but at the CTA side, the problem, not the problem, the law just doesn't allow for like a local participation preference. So that's a federal stipulation. So
Really? Okay. Yeah, I know they have something with the workforce side of things, but I think contracting has been a huge issue, especially when I speak to legislators in that vicinity, or within the area, whether it's their districts or their wards. That's been something that they've been really speaking up about. So we'll see how things go, but I know you advocate for all, so just wanted to get your take on that. So that,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
there is a there the USDOT allows for entities to consider like headquarters and office location proximity, but it doesn't allow for like
Mhm.
a state HQ preference or anything like that.
Okay, wonderful. What's the biggest misconception about advocacy groups such as the ACEC?
I think a lot of times, especially with ACC, people think we're a little bit more transportation focused
Mhm.
in central, and um, and while we do spend a lot of time with those partners, we are still engaged in a lot of other spaces. We're taking a huge a look and investment in right now in water infrastructure. We're going to make that a key priority of our next legislative agenda. Also, and on the energy side. So, while a lot of maybe our public facing, sessions and training sessions and such are a little bit more transportation related, we are looking at kind of the holistic part here. So,
Okay. Well, no, I may have fell in that bucket, to be honest. I mean, I know we're, talking about infrastructure, but a lot of what we do is focused in on transportation. So we know ACC, you all do a very great job in advocating and playing a role in that space. But yeah, if there's other spaces that you all are in, we would definitely love to figure out how to be a little more involved in efforts, to make sure legislation is passed and participation is diverse.
yeah.
So, um, so every year ACC recognizes leaders in our industry with a mentorship award. How do you define mentorship, right? And what are the criterias do the organization use to award uh, something like a mentor of the year?
So honestly, this year we're changing it up a little bit, and the mentor of the year is going to be selected by past mentees, past emerging professional.
Nice.
And I think I don't know if there's a metric for this, but I think it goes back to kind of what we talked about initially. Is like telling the story,
Yeah.
and not just really telling your story, but a lot of the application submissions for Mentor of the Year came from people who were mentored by them
Yeah.
and telling the impact that that person had on them as they move through the industry. So I think like those things are incredibly impactful. And I'm excited this year that we're going to have our past emerging professionals
Yeah.
judging in this category because I think they bring the best knowledge to this space. So
How do you distinguish between informal mentoring and mentoring that truly moves the needle? Right? There's, you can be a mentor just by being you. your day-to-day actions and being visible. People see how you interact and navigate throughout the industry. Hell, you're my mentor, right? But then also you have different types of mentorship. In your opinion, which one moves the needle, and what's your thoughts around mentorship as a whole?
Well, look, we always want to be professional, right? So we're all, to your point about informal, like we're always kind of in that space. Like, how do we,
Yes.
are we acting professional?
Yeah.
I think to your point about, the moving the needle mentorship, that's more about being intentional. Are you engaging with someone and providing advice? Are you showing them, hey, professionally think about doing it this way, or think about approaching the situation this way and
Yeah.
stuff. So I think that to me would be the difference. Both can work. But if but the intentional side is, are you willing now to devote time? Are you willing to have that conversation? And they're not all great conversations, right? But are you willing to take on that responsibility? So
Yeah. No, I agree. Time is key, and we're all busy. We all have a hectic schedule, so making time to make an impact in someone else's life, I think, is very, that is that intentional piece that you speak of that is definitely needed in our industry. And at the end of the day, what we do at our foundation is we make sure that we have those one-on-one touch points with young folks that may be interested in this career field, or they may not be. But what we're lacking, from my point of view, is a lot of just time to really get to know and understand the next generation. And let's look at what they want to do, some of their dreams and their aspiration, and see how we can incorporate it within our industry. So that's what we're doing at Pinpoint Scholars Foundation. We're taking the time to have one-on-one mentorship. Also, we're making sure that we're visible, because you can't be what you can't see. In order to become successful, you have to see someone and say, oh, okay, wow, I would really, love to do what this person is doing. And, I want to grow up and just be the best that I can be. But you only can do that by seeing a role model such as Michael Jordan, right? And you say, oh, okay, well, I want to play basketball. I want to win 6 championships, right? Then you aspire to be that, and maybe even more. So it's being visible, it's being intentional, and that's something that we're looking to do. If someone wants to get in touch with you, or if they want to join ACEC, how can they find you?
our website, www.acecil.org. Can reach out to me there. They can see what events we have coming. We've got a great staff. So anyone on our team will be able to help them navigate if they want to attend an event, or if they want to consider joining. But I think we've got some of the best industry networking events,
Oh, yeah.
and with some of the most sought after speakers. So it's even if they want to take it for a test drive and just come out and,
Yeah.
and see what an event looks like, we're happy to help them out. So
Oh, yeah. Well, I definitely co-sign. ACEC has been an incredible organization, great with advocacy. And Kevin, he makes time for everyone. So I really appreciate you even making time for me today, sitting here having this interview. So thank you so much, Kevin.
yeah, no, this was awesome. Great to do it.
All
And
right.
let's keep the conversation going.
All right. So I'll have you back on, right?
Sure.
I got him, y'all. You hear that? Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thanks.